Hey everyone, Simon here, back with another video to answer a question, which is, what's the difference between Vedic astrology and sidereal astrology, or rather, Vedic astrology, which is sidereal astrology, and tropical astrology? And to help answer that question, my partner, Nadya Lakaeva, is here. She's going to help answer this question. If you don't know who Nadya is, I'll show you her website. Her courses are incredible, and they're each individual classes on each of the planets. We'll go over them. I like to promote work that is excellent, and wherever there's excellence in the world, I will continue to shine a light on it. But before we do that, let's get started with answering this. By the way, hi Nadya, I didn't let her even say anything. I'm excited.
Hi, everyone.
All right. So let me share my screen, and we're going to go. Here's a beautiful image, but let's go to the question first. Oops, there it is. So this is a video I made on unusual Uranus, and a great question came up, which is, hey Simon, thanks for this video. I have a question. It has been bugging me forever. How come both sidereal and tropical systems work? It's a very interesting question, isn't it? How can both things work if they are, in today's world, 24 degrees apart? In today's time, previously they were 23 and so forth, but they keep growing wider and wider apart. I understand the technical differences in them, but how come they both work? Tropical is quote unquote more psychological, they say, but really, what does it mean? Excellent question. I have the same question. So, if it's about the relationship, the angular relationship of the planets, that's fine, but the angles don't change, but there is a huge difference in the ascendant, like if you're an Aries ascendant versus a Pisces ascendant. So how can we answer this question? Nadya, do you want to chime in here? I'll let you start.
Well, I think it's important to understand that the signs, even though they're named the same, they're not the same. So that's, I think, where the confusion lies, where Gemini and Gemini are named Gemini. But in Western astrology, in the tropical zodiac, it's a couple of twins, and in the Vedic zodiac, it's a couple making love. It's a completely different type of energy there. And yes, they have a little bit of overlay, like, the communications and all that kind of stuff, and even the rulership, right, of Mercury. But in reality, there are two different signs because it falls back, right? How many degrees right now? 24?
24 degrees. So
Yeah.
your first point is beautiful. I'm going to just summarize it for people because it may have just passed. The first point is that when you say Gemini in Western tropical astrology, that means something. When you say Gemini in Vedic, it means something else, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, the word but. Maybe the word but in English is a conjunction, or but, right? But in a different language, it means something else, even though it's the same word.
Right.
So what Nadya said is very important. The name for Gemini in Sanskrit is Mithuna, and it's related to the word Maituna, which means having sex. So it's a couple having sex. They're not twins. They are together. They're united. There are two of them. There's still that duality is there, but it's a different vibe, right? So go ahead, continue.
Right. So I think the confusion is taking things out of a context of a system. It's important to understand that each of the systems, the Vedic and the Western, the tropical and the sidereal, they are wholesome in their own. But once you take it out of context and you start to mix it all up, then it becomes confusing. So within the constraints of the system, it works, but outside of it, it doesn't. And the confusion is in the fact that it's named the same, but it's almost like you can look at them as homonyms, the words that sound the same, but they actually mean different things. And sometimes they have overlap in the meaning, but it's not the same thing. That's number one. Number two is, in my experience, in my lineage, our lineage, the signs are not used as much as, or the zodiac, the 12 zodiac signs are not used as much as the 27 ancient zodiac signs, the nakshatras. And those are, because they're so plentiful, there's more of them, and they're more ancient, and they're so full of mysticism and meaning behind it. It's not just a psychological thing, it's that describes you. It's very mythical and just full of meaning. So I personally use them more than, like, you know, your sun or moon is in Taurus. Yes, it means something, and maybe the tattvas of the sign, that it's a earth sign, right? That means that it's a fixed sign, it's not a movable sign. That means something. But the qualities of it, I don't use as much personally. I focus on within that Taurus sign. Are you in Kritika? Are you in Rohini? Are you in Mrigashira? Within those, are you in a particular Drekana? Are you in a particular, you know, Pada,
So,
etc.?
okay,
Right?
so that's 2 points right there. So let me summarize. The first point is, in Vedic astrology and Jyotisha, we tend to use nakshatras more, which are the ancient 27 or 28 Vedic signs. So those are the Vedic signs to describe your personality, your characteristics, your qualities. We don't use the rashis. So a rashi is one of the 12 zodiac signs. What we use the rashis for, and what the word rashi means, is a heap. It's just a heap of stuff. It's like a closet full of stuff that you pull out when you need it. For example, if I'm asking a question, should I move? And Aries comes up on the ascendant. Now that Rashi is a movable Rashi. That's one of the items in the heap. So that indicates, yes, you should move, right? For example, there are other quantifiers. So some Rashis are outdoor, some are indoor, and some are in the doorway. So when you're asking, hey, where did I lose my keys? And an indoor Rashi comes up, then you know, oh, they're in the house, right? It doesn't matter if it's Gemini or Aquarius, what the sign is, it's its quality. So all those qualities are thrown into a heap, and that's called a Rashi. So
And then
Vedic
also
astrology.
you use the ruler too, and then what is the ruler doing? Like what's the ruler of that Rashi? What is its qualities? Is it exalted? Is it debilitated? What house is it in? What are the relationship of the sign of the,
So I think
etc.?
tropical astrology also uses that. And I find Western astrology's description of the signs very accurate. You know, if you're a Scorpio moon and a Scorpio sun or whatever, you exhibit those qualities. Vedic
Absolutely.
astrology doesn't defer to the signs. That this is your second point. It defers to the nakshatras. Okay. The third point is, it doesn't use those zodiac. So it uses the nakshatras to give you the character qualities. Then it uses the signs still in a different way. So it doesn't rely. So if you're a Scorpio sun in tropical, but you end up being a Libra sun in Vedic, those two things actually end up meaning more or less the same thing, because what Libra means in tropical, searching for harmony, balance, artistic, a negotiator, and so forth, means something else. Then I guess if you're a Libra sun in tropical, more than likely you'll be a Virgo. So then those become qualities in Virgo. Why? Because one of the top nakshatras in Virgo is Chitra, which is very artistic and very, harmony minded and so forth. So
Is Hasta, the
we
preceding.
arrive at the same or a similar destination using a different vehicle. And I liken this, so this would be point number 4, to the difference between Ayurveda, which uses the pulse and uses 5 elements, and Chinese medicine, which uses the pulse, uses 5 elements, but they're different elements. There's metal in there.
Yes.
right? There's wood in there. Whereas Ayurveda uses ether, air, fire, water, earth in a concrete system. Chinese medicine also. So Chinese medicine is going to use different herbs, different words to describe what's going on, right? Your yang, your whatever energy's off here, it's going to be your pitta in rakta dhatu. The goal, hopefully, is to arrive at the same destination. Now, having said that, the reason I started with tropical astrology. The reason I moved to Vedic astrology is because it is tied to the philosophical and historical system of ancient India, which is very, very ancient, very deep, and still alive. It's a living system. So speaking that language, the language of Ayurveda, the language of Tantra, and so forth, makes sense to a modern day person. Whereas in tropical, in many ways, it's divorced from the ancient teachings, although many modern astrologers, are trying to bring back that classical, the Greek philosophy and so forth, the ancient philosophy, using whole signs and so forth. Do you want to add to that, or any thoughts on that?
Well, yes, I have to agree. I did not personally start with Western. In fact, all of the Western astrology I experienced before Vedic, I started in studying Vedic, was so superficial that in my mind, astrology sucked. Like, it didn't make sense because all I knew was the sun sign astrology, back of the magazine kind of stuff. And it just seemed ridiculous because it's so general.
It is.
And
this is why scientists and people of any,
so heartbreaking.
educational or, intellectual capacity poo-poo it, as well they should, because it's too general.
Yep. So coming from a yoga background, Ayurveda background, it was a no-brainer to dive deep into this just such a rich culture and knowledge that Jyotisha represents. And I personally sprinkle in the tropical kind of stuff, mainly just through the outer planets, just like Simon is making videos now recently with the outer planets. Outer planets are so powerful, and they're only tropical because they've been discovered recently due to scientific advancements. We're just able to see farther into the cosmos, but there are even some of the remnants are even present in the Vedas as well, right? So yeah, I mean, to me, Jyotisha is a no-brainer, but Western works as well. It just works within its own system. I also like that the Vedic system is based on the moon. So even though the comment, for example, says that the Western is more philosophical, more psychological, right? I would disagree with that because the Vedic system is based on the moon, and moon is our internal mind. It's our ability to process life and life information.
The reality is that there is no such thing as better than. Honestly, I truly believe this. There is what's right for you. So I have seen tropical astrologers make spot on accurate predictions. In fact, who was it? Johannes Kepler. Was it Kepler or Copernicus? Sure, I think it's Copernicus. In his journals, right? He's a well-known and famous in the world of astronomy for the movement of the spheres and so forth, for discovering that the Earth revolves around the sun. The Earth is not the center of the universe and so forth. But he was an amazing astrologer, and in his journals, his predictions were dead on. What a person's career would be, the month and the year that they would die. We're talking like 20 years before that person died, right? He made those predictions without computers, without, any of the data that we have. So tropical and Vedic astrology can be extremely powerful predictive tool. It can also be an extremely insightful tool for psychological and spiritual progress. It just depends in whose hands that tool who's operating the tool, right? So if you're skilled, you're going to get the job done.
100%.
And it's also a matter of preference.
I think it's beyond the preference, because honestly, it's about the blessing that you get in this lifetime. What lineage you're blessed to follow, what information you have access to, that is a blessing.
Yeah.
So if you belong to a lineage of Western astrologers and they're amazing, then you could be a million times better than a crappy Vedic astrologer, and not the other way around. It just depends on what blessing you get, how much you've earned,
you know,
what kind of punya you've earned.
Another analogy is the notes of a scale. So in chords, you can take, for example, a C chord, which is a nice major chord. It sounds very nice. And you take an A minor chord, which is kind of sad and Spanish and a little bit, you know, sexy. They're mostly all the same notes in both chords, right? There's just one subtle difference, and they're both in the same scale and the same chord progression in most songs. And yet that one little change changes the flavor, right, of the song that you're writing. One is minor, one is major, and so forth. But they both create beautiful music. They both can tell a story depending on the story that you want to tell. So that's another analogy. But let's get back to some of the technicals. I do want to talk about, because another question, it wasn't asked here, but is, well, how can Vedic astrology not use the trine and the sextile and the, you know, sesquiquadrate and all these, you know, biquintile aspects that are now popular in tropical astrology? That is a good question. I'm glad you asked, virtually, telepathically. And the way Vedic astrology deals with this is we have something called subcharts. We have divisional charts that are a sneaky way of introducing aspects. So, for example, if you have two planets conjunct in the Navamsha, the D9, that means that they are in a specific aspect in the D1, the main chart. They are in an aspect of either a conjunction in the D1 that is very tight, within a couple of degree or two, or 40 degrees apart, or 80 degrees apart, or 120 degrees apart, which is a trine. So every two planets that are trined exactly within 1 or 2 degrees orb max are going to be conjunct in the Navamsha. Okay? So every interval of 40 degrees shows up as a conjunction in the Navamsha. The other subcharts, the D7 and so forth, also have those quote unquote hidden aspects. So when we look at the subcharts, we're basically analyzing planetary relationships to themselves and to the ascendant in a specific way for a specific purpose, like to predict children, to predict relationships, and so forth. So that's one way that Vedic astrology does aspects, is through the divisional charts. Do you want to add to that or say something about that?
Well, if we're comparing the two, I think Vedic astrology has an upper hand in the timing on the one hand, because we have the, you know, the dashas, the different.
I love that Nadya's taking one stance. So by definition, that I'm going to take the counter stance, and we're going to do.
Yes, and I want you to, because I respect both. I resonate with one, and I think that's valid, just like you were saying, because we all have a dharma, and my dharma, my inner truth, is the Vedic lineage. So, but yes, the counterpoint is
Vedic astrology has the dashas.
Yes, the counterpoint is the tropical system has the solar return. Oh, not what do they call it? The solar progressions. The progressions, because the Vedic system also has solar returns called Varshapala. And those can be incredibly effective. I don't know much about them, and yes, they especially work really well with the astrocartography, where you relocate.
Another tropical Western astrologer discovery, astrocartography. Jim Lewis, may he rest in peace. discovered this idea that where you move, you get a different horoscope. Does it change your whole life? No, you're still born with what you're born with, but it changes its expression.
Yes.
Potentially.
It helps you actualize if you get that blessing to move to a place where it helps you do that. Or on the other hand, it thwarts your progress further. It makes it even harder if your destiny to go to a harder to live
if you
place.
move to a Pluto Mars line, if you move to, a Chiron line, you're going to experience that energy versus moving to a Jupiter line or a Venus line. I know I'm simplifying, but the essence of it. Also, when you move somewhere, you flip your chart. So if you ever wanted, to change your chart, man, if I had been born 10 minutes earlier or later, well, you can actually do that. Just go somewhere, move east or west, and that'll change the rotation of your chart. It's possible. By the way, this image that I have behind me, I wanted to, I found on Pinterest. I do not know who the artist is. If you
It's
know, or you are
gorgeous.
the artist, please reach out and I will I'll put the link in my description. It's a beautiful image. This image shows the signs, which are right here, Aries, the ram, and the nakshatras, the Vedic constellations that overlay them. And of course, no discussion about Vedic versus tropical would be complete without mentioning that the Vedic system is sidereal, which simply means the ancients looked up at the stars and they noticed, hey, when the sun or any planet was close to the star Regulus, for example, certain things happen. People born in that time have certain qualities, certain regal nature, certain certain stature. And so they assigned the word, the nakshatra Magha to that. Not because the star looks like anything or the constellation, but because people born with that. And this is over generations, they studied this. People born with their planets or ascendant or moon close to that star seem to exhibit consistent qualities. And so those fixed stars then became associated with nakshatras. Not all of the nakshatras have fixed stars. I'll stop my share here. Not all of the nakshatras have fixed stars. Some of them are implied, and that also bears on the meaning. The nakshatra Shatabisha, it's 1,000,000, it's 1,000 things. The nakshatra Mula, Mula is a root. It's so deep you can't see its origins. It has no root star. It's implied, right? But some of them, the royal, the king, the queen, the important, the potentate, they have a royal star that's visible. It's right there in the heart of the lion. What was the point? The point is the Vedic asterisms are tied to stars as well. So I think we should wind this up. Do you have any last thoughts?
My last thought is just to encourage you to study astrology in whatever form it speaks to you, but go deep and honor the lineage. And it's also important to belong to a lineage, even if it's not official, but with the lineage, there's protection. And it's okay to experiment and watch this and watch that and read this and read that, but then still try to find a lineage that you resonate with. You try not to deviate from it too much, because then you lose the protection. Don't dig too many wells that are shallow. It's okay to experiment, and then once you find it, dig deep until you can't anymore, and then you can move on, right? Certain churches set up in such a way where you can't really belong to one lineage for your whole life, which is fine. But yeah.
Yes, I love that you say that. And I love what you have on your site here, which is start on a journey of discovering your dharma to help you burn karma. That's the essence of it. The more you live your path, as Arnold used to say when they asked him, hey, what do you think of that competitor? He's bigger than you. He says, I don't think about the other guy. I only think about myself. And what he meant is, when I do my best, I know the best outcome will happen. That's it. That's all you have to think about. Do your dharma,
Yeah.
everything else will follow. It may not follow the way your little ego wants. You want to be, you know, a famous pop star. But following your dharma, let's say you become an amazing producer. And that's where you can help the most people. That's where you find the love of your life doing that. Right? Or a painter, or something completely different, whatever it is. Do your dharma, love, prosperity, health, happiness comes to you as a side effect. So I love that that's there. This is love,
That's
health, prosperity comes to you as a side effect of doing your dharma. That's it.
absolutely. That's really the lens I look at the world through is how can I minimize karma? And through Simon, I learned, through his amazing work, I've learned that the simplest way is to do your dharma. Dharma means truth, your inner purpose, your calling. What does my soul want to do in this lifetime? And by honoring it, not by following the pressure from the family, to get married when my chart is not set up for marriage, or marrying at the wrong time, say, or going being a lawyer when I want to be an artist, or the other way around, born into an artist family and pressured to be a musician, and instead I want to go and be a doctor somewhere far away. Just living your truth eliminates karma.
Yep. Amen to that. And so I love
Thank
the
you for
way
sharing my side. I'm so embarrassed.
I love the way you've organized this. There's so much info here. And what I love, especially at the end, is that you honor your your lineage. And so these are all the different readings you can get, from compatibility to lucky sounds to timing.
Okay,
Um,
stop now.
and the resources page, again,
The
I've gone,
resources page, yes, that's all. Well,
these are
a
my
lot of
books, but then these are our associates and teachers and friends.
teachers and people
Um,
I love who
these are
inspired me and
amazing
taught
guys.
me
So I've gone
to
over these
instill.
in another video, but so just bear with me
Okay.
if this is old for you folks who've seen my other videos. But I really do respect that people honor their lineage, right? So
Yeah.
what I was trying to get to is to show that there are classes available here, very inexpensive, anywhere from $4, $5,
I'll
$6.
bring him down even more. There's short little classes that I actually share with my clients. So if you get a reading from me, you will get the videos that actually apply to your chart. So you get them for free. You don't have to pay for them.
So if you're a client, you get the relevant videos free. So the
Yeah.
takeaway here is this is how you would speak to a client. So what you're sharing in this video is professional level astrological advice, insights. Okay, you've got Saturn moon in your chart. Here's how to deal
So
with it. Here's what it means.
the real reason I created these is because I got tired of repeating myself over and over, day in and day out. I keep saying the same thing, and I was like, I should just record it and send it to them beforehand, and so they watch it. And so the time we spend together is more one-on-one talking. And I'm studying psychology. I'm gonna go get a degree in psychology, so it's more like this one-on-one experience, and all of this information they can listen and re-listen to it on their own time, and they come to the reading with questions. Okay, when in the video you said that, what did you mean? Or that really
Yeah.
resonated with me, or anything
So
like
it's a
that.
great lead in, and it saves your voice, and it makes the reading
Yeah.
even more impactful because you're giving them time to pre-digest this material beforehand. I love it. I love it. So this is intended for clients, but I think aspiring astrologers can also use and digest this information and use it word for word or however with their own clients.
Yeah,
I
the new
use
ones, I started actually making beautiful slides for them so you can take a screenshot. For the older ones that I'm gonna mark them all down a little more. It's just me talking, and I bring up some examples of famous people.
cool. And this, by the way, would apply to a tropical chart as well. If people have Neptune moon conjunct, they have Neptune moon conjunct. Those things are more or less the same, although the
Well,
boundaries of signs. We can have a more advanced
yeah.
talk about the difference between sidereal and tropical, because two planets can be 5 degrees apart, but be in different signs. Now, in Vedic astrology, they're not conjunct.
They're inconjunct, in fact. They're
well,
not
but that word doesn't exist in Vedic astrology. That's a Western word.
right.
So they're 212.
I'm an outsider dermatype. I'm allowed to sprinkle things with,
so two planets, even a couple of degrees apart, if they are broken, if there's a fence between them, the sign boundary, then they are not considered conjunct in Vedic astrology, even though they would be in tropical. Now, traditional tropical astrologers also respect the sign boundary. So to the point that there are astrologers, very well-respected astrologers, who would say that the sun and say Mercury, they could be 3 degrees apart, but if there is a sign change, Mercury is not combust.
In the Western or Vedic?
What they would mean, no, this is in the tropicals. What they would mean is, of course, it's still actually combust, but it doesn't behave like a combust planet because there's a fence. So we have to discuss sign boundaries. So that's like level 2 discussion of what is the difference between tropical and Vedic, and maybe we can have that at another time. But for that, we have to bring in specific examples and to show, okay, this is how this plays out in a person's life or in an event chart and so forth. So we'll leave that for next time.
More to talk about, always.
Thank you, Nadya, for joining me, and we'll see you guys in the next one, okay? Namaste, everyone. Bye-bye.